Hello, everyone. How are you today? I am very excited today. We are going to talk about perceiving entities. But one of the things that I know, and a lot of the awareness that I've gained over the years came before access consciousness. But however, access consciousness is still it has amazing tools, and I still use the tools inside of this as well. And one of the tools is deepest barriers down. And I know that when we start talking about things like entities, a lot of times people have some sort of resistance and reaction to it. We all have some interesting points of view about what that even means. So today I'd love to just start with, why don't we just start with our deepest barriers down? Even the ones we don't know about. Push them down, pull them down, shove them down, way down, right? Especially because right now we're in a conversation about perceiving entities. Do you think it's easier to perceive entities if we have all of our walls and barriers up and we have a point of view about what that is? And that somehow we're safer behind walls? Did you know it's actually walls and barriers that keep us separate from our own awareness and what's really true for us? Cool. So pushing barriers down, destroying them and creating them. And the cool thing is you can actually pick them back up. The next thing I'd like to invite you to do before we get into this conversation a little bit more is to include your body in this. Include your body in this adventure. So again, one of the ways that we have walls and barriers and we keep ourselves separate is by pretending things aren't there, but we also tend to keep ourselves from, how do I want to put this? So one of the ways that we keep ourselves with walls and barriers and keep ourselves separate is we also don't embody our bodies. So perceive your being, right? Your being is way larger than your body anyway, right? Now, would you be willing to include your body in your being? There you go. A little bit different, right? So one of the ways that we keep ourselves separate and try to protect ourselves and have these barriers is to not include our bodies and not include our body's awareness. So today I just like to invite you, even if it's just for this next, 10 minutes or so, would you be willing to include your body in the perception of entities? Now, I say that because entities, we all have different perceptions and different ways that they show up for us. And a lot of times it's through your body. So maybe it's a tingling in your shoulder, or maybe your ears ring, or your ears feel plugged up, right? I get a tickle in my throat, so that was very timely. Thank you. There's a lot of different ways that we perceive entities, but if we're including our bodies and our beings, then how much more could we perceive? How much more could we be aware of? Now I'm going to pause on the perception of entities a little bit more. We'll dive into that, but I also want to remind you, you have choice. Okay? So if anything I say is heavy to you or doesn't work for you, you can totally throw it away. You don't have to follow these videos at all, right? This is just things that I've learned over time, and if they're a contribution to you, great. And if they're not, I'm totally cool with that. So if you are interested in this, you think this would be fun, then you can hit subscribe. There'll be a button around here somewhere. Just the subscribe button. So I want to go into that a little bit deeper, because I know for me, when I first became a clairvoyant medium, I did know I had a couple of mentors in my life that were teachers of mine, that they were psychic and they could find missing children. And they even both did that for a while. And I'll be really honest with you, at that time in my life, I was not emotionally stable enough for that. I knew that could not be my path or my journey. So I was like, if that's what, these entities would like me to do, they needed to go find somebody else. So I share that story because I want you to know that you get to choose really what works for you. Excuse me. So, and I know there's lots of different ways that entities can show up for us, and lots of different things that they can show us. And today we're not going to really talk about that so much, but there's just different, like I said, they helped find missing children. Gary Douglas has had an antique finder, like an entity that would help find antiques. And he did that, and I'm sharing that story because he used that entity until he realized he could use his own awareness for that same knowledge. He didn't need an entity to tell him what antiques are great. He actually had that. So I shared that because I want, again, to emphasize you have choice. You are not a victim. They're not more powerful than you. And you can utilize them in many different ways and work with them. And that's going to be another episode altogether. But you get to choose if that works for you or not. So, and yeah. So back to perception. Thank you for letting me say all that. Again, I just wanted to emphasize that you get to choose, and you are the most powerful being here, right? Okay. So the first key to perceiving entities would be acknowledging when you do. So the tickling on the shoulder thing, for a long time, and it wasn't a normal tickling. It was like an energetic tickling on my shoulder that almost felt like it came from the inside. I know that might sound a little weird, but I'm sharing what has happened for me in hopes that you can go, oh, well, maybe that, right? And then acknowledgement is the key, but how do you get to acknowledgement is ask a question. So if you're feeling like a tingling on your shoulder, or for me, for a long time, I had a tickling in my throat, and that tickling in my throat, for a long time, I just thought it was a tickling in my throat, right? Until many years later, I went, is this entity awareness? And that's when I got the awareness it was. So you can ask that about any sort of sensation that you have going on in your body, whether that be, like I said, the ringing in your ears, or it could show up any way, right? And how it shows up for you is going to be different than anybody else. So first, ask a question. Is this entity awareness? And if it is, then that's when the acknowledgement comes in. Acknowledging that you are aware of them is actually what has you get more awareness of them. You might be somebody who sees flashes out of the corner of your eyes, right? Or the other way that some people perceive them is they can see them with their third eye. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of an exercise here because I want you to have an awareness of what that might be if you've never had a third eye sort of experience before. And so go ahead and close your eyes. And in closing your eyes, visualize a calm, safe place for you. That calm, safe place is going to be different for everybody. So wherever you find a calm, safe place, it might even be a place that you recognize, and it could be a place that you don't really recognize. But that visualization is part of your third eye sight. So that's one way you can perceive. So as you're there, you're in a calm, safe place. If it's light for you, if you'd like to, go ahead and ask for one of your team members to come into view. And maybe you can see details, maybe it's just an outline. It's all perfect, right? It's just, again, we're developing a muscle, and there's no right or wrong here. And only do what works for you. Now see if maybe you could focus in on a detail. Is there something about them, something that they are wearing, but perhaps, or something that they have on them, or maybe a gift that they're trying to gift you? Now acknowledge that. Again, there's no right or wrong, and it's like developing a muscle. So this may be your very first time even playing with this. So just keep acknowledging that you're asking. And if you do perceive something, acknowledge that. Cool. And it will happen when you're ready. So if you're not ready right now, that's okay. If it's not something that you really want in your life, that's okay. So just acknowledge that too, right? Again, I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to convert you. It's not a religion anyway, right? It's just practicing greater awareness. Now that's working with your third eye. If you're ready, you can kind of come back, open your eyes a little bit. Another way that you can perceive entities is blurring your eyesight. So have you ever focused on something for even just a few seconds, but if you focus on one point and you don't actually move your eyes, kind of like what I'm doing with you right now, then the whole world around you starts to blur. Now, I played with this quite a bit when I was first exploring these possibilities. And I actually saw some things with blurring my eyesight that, unfortunately, at the time, this was 18 years ago, freaked me out. So I stopped doing that. I thought, I don't really want to see them with my eyes. But that's a way that you can play with it and see if you can start to perceive. And it's not that you necessarily see details, maybe you will, but in blurring your eyesight, you may see, like when I did this 20 years ago, I saw the bottom of a woman's dress walking up the stairs. So it can show up in any form, right? And again, go with what works for you, because that didn't really work for me, so I stopped. And then there's external hearing. You can hear entities from external, like they're right here talking to you, or you can hear internal dialogue. I will tell you this, just as if it's a negative voice in your head, it's not you, number one. And number two, it's probably a demon that you hired. And if you go back to the demon conversation, remember demons, if you hired them, you can fire them. But it's really important to know that the negative voice in your head is not you. But that is a perception of entities. That's a perception of possibly demons or entities that aren't really happy, because there are ghosts and stuff like that that aren't very happy that you might hear internally. The external hearing was another experience for me that I was like, I didn't want that. I was at a chapel in a graveyard, and I was having lunch in this beautiful garden. It was a garden with roses and stuff, right? And I was sitting there having lunch with my friend, and he and I were the ones playing with this, and I literally heard a woman crying outside of me walking, but there was nobody there. And I was with a guy friend. And my eyes got really wide. I got a little freaked out. I was just like, did you hear that? I was like, I just heard crying. Again, it was something I wasn't really ready for. And so I shut it down. I don't really hear things externally at the moment, but it's choice. You get to choose. So, but what was even trippier about it, we didn't know this. After we were done with lunch, we walked around the chapel, and there was actually a funeral going on right then and there. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And again, I opted out of that. Some people get full body chills, and sometimes that's actually also a confirmation of something that you already know. So you may know something instinctively, and then you get full body chills, or I know somebody who sneezes twice for the confirmation. So those are also confirmation of your own knowing and can be perception of entities. And those are just a few. Those are the ones that I've had personal experiences with, but you're going to find your own. And the more that you're asking for it, playing with it, and then acknowledging it, the more it will develop, the stronger you'll become, the easier it will be. So that's just a little information on perceiving entities. I'm excited that on Thursday we're going to talk about communicating with entities. Now that we can start to perceive them, maybe we can start to communicate with them as well. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you and for your watching this, and hopefully it was valuable. Great information. Anyway, have a marvelous day.